Okay, welcome to another Maker to Monger Cellar session. Today we are very happy to have a very special guest with us, Arturo Chiriboga, obviously the inventor and namesake of Bayerischer Blue Schimmelkäse, or Chiriboga Blue, as we like to call it. We've got some extra technical aspects today. So Arturo is being joined by Norbert Sieghart. Hello, Norbert.
Hi.
So we all know Norbert as the founder and CEO and man about town for Käsekuka. Norbert has joined us previously with Albert Kraus. Now that Arturo and Albert are working together at Hofkäserei Kraus, Norbert will probably give us a little background on that partnership. And also Melissa Finch, often lurking in the chats, is joining us live today to help with a translation from Arturo. Generally, when we go see Arturo in Germany, it ends up being Arturo speaking German to Norbert, translated into Spanish and then into German and then into English. So we're hoping to cut out at least a little bit of that interference today. So we're going to do our best here to stay brisk and stay light. Myself, I'm also currently waiting on a hoagie kit to arrive from De Bruyne Brothers. So, you know, I got big plans for tonight, hoagie kit in the house. So, without further ado, Arturo, hola.
Hola.
I guess the thing that's always kind of baffled people about Chiriboga Blue is that Arturo Chiriboga doesn't have a very German sound to it. So Arturo, where did you grow up? Where are you from? What is your background?
Bueno, yo nací en Quito, Ecuador, Sudamérica.
He was born in Quito, Ecuador, in South America.
All right. And your family, did they make cheese, or were they in the dairy business? How did you come across being a cheesemaker and doing dairy business?
Mi padre era dueño de unas 2 fincas, o más o menos 300 hectáreas. 300 hectáreas, hectáreas.
2 fincas.
2 fincas, ¿sí? Y claro, mi padre siempre hizo queso fresco para el consumo de la familia.
Okay. His dad owned 2 farms, and he used to make fresh cheeses.
Oh, cool. Like for sale or just to eat by the family?
Los quesos eran solo para el consumo de la familia.
It was just for them to eat as a family.
That's cool. So Arturo decided to be a cheesemaker, and then did he study cheesemaking in Ecuador, or did he go somewhere else?
No me quedé en el Ecuador porque en esa época no había ninguna escuela de quesería en el Ecuador. Por lo tanto, tuve que viajar hacia Suiza.
So at the time that he was interested in cheesemaking, there was no cheesemaking school in Ecuador, so he went to Switzerland.
Oh, what part of Switzerland?
Yo estuve en la parte francesa, en Moudon, en la École Cantonale de Fromagerie Moudon.
So he was in the French part of Switzerland?
Yeah.
Escuela Cantonal de Quesería.
The cantonal school of cheesemaking.
That's very cool. So you studied hard cheese or fresh cheese or blue cheese? What kind of cheese did you learn to make in Switzerland?
En Suiza aprendí a hacer todo tipo de queso y de productos lácteos en general.
He learned how to make all types of cheeses and all types of dairy products in general.
Wow. And then did you go back to Ecuador and make cheese there, or did you stay in Switzerland, or where did you go then?
Después de 3 años de haber estado en Suiza, después de haber obtenido el diploma de maestro, regresé al Ecuador. Trabajé en 2 empresas grandes en el Ecuador y luego construí mi propia empresa de quesos en Ecuador.
So he studied in Switzerland for 3 years and got his diploma. Then he went back to Ecuador and opened up 2 factories there.
Cool. So then how do you end up in Germany?
Los problemas en Ecuador eran en esa temporada muy grandes, con muchos problemas, ¿ya? Y mi esposa es de descendencia alemana, ¿ya? Y por eso decidimos venir a Alemania, ¿no? Para vivir aquí.
So he said that at the time there were many problems in Ecuador. And since his wife had roots in Germany, she's of German descent, they just decided to move to Germany.
And did you originally go to the Allgäu, or I guess, did you try to find a big cheese area and then seek out a dairy to work at, or how did you find a dairy job, a cheese job?
Los primeros meses que estuve en Alemania, viví en Heidelberg, ¿ya? Y luego de 3 meses pusieron un anuncio en el periódico que necesitaban un maestro quesero en la Obermühle. Y así fue como pasó, ¿no?
So he says when he first got to Germany, he lived in a village named Heidelberg.
Heidelberg?
Pronunciation. And that while they were living there, he saw an advertisement for the need for a cheese teacher in Obermühle. So that's how he ended up at Obermühle.
And at the time, did they have the restaurant and the hotel and all of that?
En ese tiempo solo existía el restaurante y la quesería.
At that time, it was just the restaurant and the cheese factory.
Oh, cool. So you go to work at Obermühle, and many dairies that we visit, they make one cheese. Did you start making just Bergkäse, or did you always think I will make many kinds of cheese?
En realidad, cuando llegué a la Obermühle, hacíamos más o menos 8 diferentes tipos de queso, ¿ya? Pero a la final, en el tiempo hemos llegado a hacer hasta 20 diferentes tipos de queso.
So he says when he first started at Obermühle, they were making 8 cheeses, but now they're making 20 different types of cheeses.
And for those of you that don't know, Obermühle, the cheese dairy, is about the size of my office. I mean, it's a very small space, so it's like pretty incredible how they can use that space. So what made you decide to make a blue cheese at your dairy?
El queso azul lo hacemos desde hace más o menos 14 años, o sea, lo hacíamos, porque ahora lo hacemos, como saben, en la quesería. ¿Sí? Eso hace años, o sea, el inicio fue en el año 2006, ¿no? ¿Ya? La inspiración fue que a mí me gustaba mucho el gorgonzola, pero para mí era un queso demasiado fuerte en sabor, ¿sí? Y era un queso que yo quise hacerlo más cremoso y que se lo pueda comer de otra forma, ¿no?
He said that they've been making the blue cheese for over 14 years now. They started in 2006. And I asked him the inspiration behind it, and he said it was gorgonzola because he liked eating the gorgonzola, but it was a little bit too strong, so he wanted to make it more creamy.
That's very cool. So what was it a matter of skimming? Was it a matter of, what did he do differently to the style of gorgonzola to make it into his Chiriboga?
Yo no utilicé la receta de gorgonzola para hacerlo más cremoso. ¿sí? Sino que hice un nuevo queso.
Okay, so he used a completely different recipe.
That'll do it.
It wasn't the Gorgonzola recipe.
Okay. So what I noticed when I was at his dairy was a few different things. One is that are there a lot of blue cheeses that are pressed as much as, like, was the pressing of the cheese something that you had seen with other blue cheeses with that much pressure, or the brining of the cheese? Are these typical for blue cheese making?
No. Es algo que yo lo hice para conseguir esa suavidad y esa cremosidad en el queso.
Okay. Yeah, so he's saying that the pressing method is not usual for a blue cheese, and that it's the weight of the cheese that's used to press it. So it's not a machine or anything that presses the cheese. And that he decided to use that method for himself because he wanted to achieve a creamier cheese.
Yeah. Is it skimmed or is it just full fat milk?
La leche es entera, o sea, con pura grasa, y además se le añade un poco de crema a la leche.
So he said the milk is full fat, and in addition to that, he adds cream.
Oh, is that all pasteurized or raw, or is it thermized?
Es una leche termizada. Eso significa no pasteurizada, solamente calentada a 70 grados durante 10 minutos.
The milk is thermized. That means that it's heated to 70 degrees and for 10 minutes.
That's great.
Second.
And where, so, okay, so we're gonna kind of jump to Norbert for a second. So Norbert, how did you meet Arturo?
When we started exporting cheese to the United States, I think I always thought I know every dairy in the Allgäu. So, but I was wrong. So this was one of the few I don't have on my list. I don't have had on focused. And a customer in London, she asked me, "Oh, I'm interested in Bavarian blue cheese." And so I think the industry have a lot of blue cheeses, but to find a good artisan one, it was not so easy. And so it was more or less really a food hunting thing, to go to a very, very small dairy at this time. And then we find this cheese in the showcase, and then they start to talk to the Romosa family as well as to Arturo, and then the new cheese love started.
I mean, it had to be exciting to find a blue, like what your customer in London was looking for,
yeah,
but something so unusual for the style and the provenance.
Absolutely. This was something really, really special. And I think the funny thing is, you guys from Colombia know that as well. It's not the biggest cells, but it's, I think, one of the most continuous cells. So everybody loves it.
No, it's really consistent. And up until very recently, we really couldn't get enough of it. So we're going to kind of talk a little bit about that in a minute. So at Oberimule, Arturo, how many different milk producers were there? And was it all brown Swiss milk?
Sí, la leche viene de Hindeland, que es una región de aquí. ¿Ya? Hindeland, fue de Hindeland und Hinterstein. De ahí recibimos la leche. Son más o menos unos 40 agricultores, ¿no? Sí, pero son fincas pequeñas. Uh-huh. Partes son Brown Swiss, ¿sí? Otras son las típicas vacas alemanas, ¿no?
So he's saying that they get their milk from Hinterland. It's about 40 different places, but very small producers, and mostly brown Swiss and some other typical German cows.
Right, and Norbert, this is fairly consistent with cheese making in the Allgäu, right? I mean, the way Obere Mühle was doing it, you're talking about herds that are what, maybe 10 cows?
Yeah.
15 cows?
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, as more you come in the mountains, as more you come to the south, as smaller the farms are getting. So that's because you get in the mountain terrain, and you cannot have thousands of cows. It's impossible. And Batindelang is more or less at the really starts where the bigger alpine, German alpine starting as well. So
yeah,
this is alpine terrain where probably farmers have 10 to 15 cows as an average.
Yeah, it is. I think sometimes when we hear like that many milk producers going into a dairy, it's sad because here a herd would be 100 cows, 150 cows. And then we see behind you what Obere Mühle, I mean, it's a very small operation. So I just think it's good to clarify. So Norbert, when did we start with Chiriboga Blue? Do you remember what year it started coming into the US?
I guess I know the date when we changed the name. So it was 2013. So it was, I think you started at the same time. Is that right? At Columbia Cheese, 13?
Probably.
Yes. We changed the name, and probably we have had this cheese 1 or 2 years before. So I guess at 2011.
No, that makes sense. I think I started at the beginning of 2012.
Oh, was it 12? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I wasn't really that familiar with the cheese. At the time, if I remember right, it was very limited. How much, on a typical file or a typical year, do you remember how much we were bringing in? It was like
5 to 10, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yes.
And then did you feel like Bayerischer Blauschimmelkäse was a hurdle? I mean, we talk a lot about cheese names. We've had tremendous luck at Columbia Cheese that people have been on board with Kellerhocker. People have been on board with some names that are kind of off the beaten path. But I think when you get into things like Bayerischer Blauschimmelkäse and these kind of compound German words, it doesn't fit on a sign in somebody's case in the US. Yeah. So what led to that change, and then how do you feel it affected the sales of the cheese?
So I start with the sales amount. So I think from the beginning, from the change, it doubles from 10 to 20 yeah. Probably. But I have to be honest, it was not me who has had the idea to change the name. This was Sarah Zaborowski.
Oh, that's good on Sarah.
Yes.
Yeah, so Sarah was one of my predecessors at Columbia. It's just like it's the smallest things. We talk about how to get cheese into people's cases, how to get them to just try it, and sometimes those little details really matter. Okay, so we start off with 5 to 10, 7 or 8 years ago. I think by the time we were done with by the time Arturo stopped making at Obere Mühle, we were looking more like 120 to 180 a month. Is that about
yes,
accurate?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
I think it was batches of 30. Is it batches of 30 or it was 60?
Batches of 48.
Okay, so batches of 48. So what led to where we're going now? So to give you my impression, I went to go see Obere Mühle a few times over the years. And what I noticed was a lot of cheese being made, a lot of different types of cheese, and then Chiriboga, which had really taken off in the US, didn't have a lot of room. It was, it's a blue cheese in a building with a lot of Bergkäse, soft ripened cheeses, things that don't really want to be around blue mold. So, to kind of take you back to that, the aging room was kind of like a metro shelf that had been kind of covered up so it wouldn't, give off all of its blue mold to the other cheeses. So how did you, Norbert, did Arturo know Albert, or like how did this whole thing get started?
Yeah. First of all, I think, thank you, Arturo. So probably, Melissa, you can translate to him. thank you, Arturo, that he's still, I think a couple of years ago, he says to me, Norbert, we have to stop making this cheese at the dairy because the blue mold is influencing my other cheeses as well. He showed me the Senna-case with fenugreek or without, and always the blue spores in the cheese, especially in summertime. So probably Arturo can tell you more how infected his cheese. And I said, Arturo, please, 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 I will find a solution for us. So it's always for us. And because I have in my mind, find this genius cheesemaker, Albert Kraus, and I know that he wants to build a new dairy. And before he started any work, I brought these two cheesemakers together, and this was a deal. That's it. So that means Arturo says, yes, okay, I will continue the next, I think, 1.5 years till the new dairy is built. I will do my best. I will throw a lot of cheese away, whatever. And but he waited to continue making because my customer, I think 1 year to drop a cheese is not good. And but anyway, we survived. And from the very beginning in 18, we moved the whole production of Chiriboga Blue to Albert Kraus. That means the molds, the needles, the cultures, everything, included the cheesemaker.
Right. So, Arturo, how did this affect are you still making cheese at Obermühle, or are you now only making cheese at Kraus?
Por ahora lo estoy haciendo también en Obermühle, ¿sí? Ahí voy a trabajar hasta finales de julio de este año. ¿Ya? Y luego, bueno, estoy haciendo también donde Albert los quesos, ¿no? Ahí hago 2 veces por semana. Los hago normalmente sábados y miércoles, el Chiriboga Blue. ¿Sí? Y es decir la cosa, ¿no?
So he's explaining that he will continue to make cheese at Obermühle until July of this year, and that he's making cheeses 2 times a week at Albert's on Saturdays and Wednesdays.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, is there a new cheesemaker coming to Obermühle?
La Obermühle ha sido arrendada a una nueva persona, ¿ya? En la cual voy a estar voy a dar asesoramiento técnico 1 año a la persona que se va a hacer cargo, ¿sí? Y luego termina mi contrato en la Obermühle por 1 año.
Said that there's a new person that's going to take over, and he will be there for 1 year to help them technically, and then they will take on the new responsibilities.
That's nice. If any of you are traveling through this part of the beautiful German countryside, I encourage you to go to the restaurant there at Obermühle. It is unbelievable. That's a side note. I'm just thinking about my hoagies now. Okay, so when you moved over, yeah.
One note. So with that move, we have Arturo also on Monday. So he will be at the Albert's Dairy in Ebersbach in the future for 3 days a week.
Only making Chiriboga, or also bringing over some of the other?
We will see.
Yeah. It's the thing about a restless cheesemaker.
So you always ask me what's next, what's new. So probably there is something new, something next.
Well, nothing new right now. So what can you tell us about the change for the production of Chiriboga when you moved over to Kraus? So is it a different kind of milk? Is it a different equipment? What has changed?
La receta no se ha cambiado. La gran ventaja ahora es que tenemos solamente vacas Bront Suisse y ellas tienen una materia grasa muy alta. Entonces no necesitamos poner más, como antes yo ponía en Obermühle, más crema, ¿no?
Okay.
Sí, hacemos con leche entera, con la grasa que tiene la leche.
Oh, ya no le echan crema.
No, ya no le echamos crema.
Okay.
Yeah,
so he's saying now that they've switched over to Albert's place, they use only brown Swiss cows, which because it has a higher fat content, they no longer have to add cream to the cheese.
Well, I was going to ask about that because Albert does not skim milk for any of his cheese production, does he, Norbert?
No.
So there isn't like secondary cream around anyway.
No, no butter.
When Arturo was making Bergkäse, he would do a skim probably on one of the milkings, right? So that's where that cream would generate from. Yeah. So what about the vat itself? I know it was a steel vat at Obermühle. Is he making it in the copper vat at Kraus or in the steel vat? That's going to be a tough one.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Norbert might be able to help.
I can ask Arturo in German. Machst du ob du den Kupferkessel benutzt oder ob du eine Stahlwanne benutzt beim Albert zum Chiriboga machen?
Wir benutzen eine Stahl.
It's a steel fat.
So it's still steel, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, a question about blue molds, because I think we don't talk about it enough, and I don't want to get into recipe and method completely, because some things have to be left up to mystery, right? But the blue mold itself, when we think of blue mold in cheese, we think that there's 3 kinds, and you just choose from one of those. For Arturo's blue mold, does he have his own blend? Does he, how did he choose what actual blue mold to use in the production?
El queso azul es un queso semi-suave, o sea, semi-suave, ¿ya? Por lo tanto, normalmente se utilizan bacterias que no llegan a una temperatura más de 45 grados, que no sobreviven más de 45 grados.
He's saying that he has to use bacteria that is better for a cheese that can be heated. So that's how he was trying to choose it.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. But it also, it doesn't seem like it's not a very salty blue. So is it only brined or is there any other salt in the production? And is it only brined for 1 day, or how much, what accounts for the low salinity of Chiriboga?
El porcentaje de sal que yo utilizo en ese queso solamente es 18% de sal. Una salmuera, ¿no? Normalmente utilizan uno más alto, yo lo utilizo más bajo. Lo utilizan 24%, yo lo utilizo solamente 18%. ¿no?
He's saying that the salt brine starts at 18%. Typically, it would be 24%, but he's starting it much lower.
Oh. I'm so happy we're doing this, by the way. It's so nice to just to talk. And then as far as aging, so Albert makes, of course, Alex. He does the Altblossom. He does Lisa. He does all of these cheeses that would also have problems with blue mold. So how do they keep that from being a problem at Kraus now? Why don't we see blue mold in Lisa?
En primer lugar, se utiliza un cuarto que no es, o sea, nosotros lo estamos haciendo de la siguiente forma. Hacemos el queso, fabricamos, pero no lo ponemos el cultivo azul directamente en el queso, ¿ya? Sino que luego lo picamos, ¿ya? Y ponemos ahí las bacterias. Entonces la contaminación es menor en el hongo azul, ¿no? Lo mantenemos ahora en un cuarto totalmente aparte de los otros. Es un cuarto totalmente cerrado. Por el momento es una cámara, ¿no? Donde hacemos 48 quesos, ¿sí? Se mantienen ahí y luego se los empaca y se los manda directo a un cuarto frío, ¿no? Están separados de los otros, ¿no? Tienen...
Yeah, so he's saying that first of all, the cheeses are kept separate, but also because of the way that they inoculate the bacteria, that it's not so contagious. That's the right word.
Yeah. So it's not as likely to spread because it's not as fully incorporated into the milk and then into the body of the cheese. It's just being introduced sort of where it wants to be.
that's correct.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so Norbert, what is the general, because I know you sell Chiriboga all over Europe, into Asia, into the US. What has the feedback been on the transition from dairy to dairy?
The feedback was nothing negative. I think when, for example, you guys probably have it younger, or it's more aged, or more blue vans in it or less. I think the cheese by itself, it doesn't matter where it's produced. It's having his up and downs and his changes. That the changing of the dairy was not so significant. I think the change by the cheese by itself could change more than the fact that you move the cheese making from one dairy to the other one.
Just natural seasonality, natural variation. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
No, I mean, it was almost striking how, and Doug, maybe you can jump in here, but there wasn't a big break off. There was at first what we would see is a little cream line right on the edge, like right around the crown. But that was kind of like a short-lived thing, and I think had to do with age more than anything. What's the feedback? What feedback have you gotten in the US?
I think just what you're saying, it's been mostly the same. Sorry for that feedback. I found that some of those earlier wheels, when that switch happened, personally, they felt a little even more milder and probably more towards that fat conversation. But other than that, they've been, like you said, just seamless transition. It really hasn't changed at all. We do have some wheels that are aged out slightly longer than they normally are right now, and those have been actually really enjoyable. Those conversely have gotten a little stronger in flavor, which I enjoy. The salt content has kind of gone up a little bit. Me and Melissa had talked about that a little bit. It's
a little more concentrated.
Nice. Yeah, it's a different profile than what I'm used to having it at, and that's been enjoyable actually. It's nice at the older age profile as well.
That's good. Norbert, this is just my own curiosity. When we order Centerkäse with fenugreek in it, do you go to Obermühle or does Arturo bring the cheese to Kraus?
No, I still go to Obermühle. I'm not kidding. Yeah, it's because it's in my process of pickup. So because Arturo have my scale, my whole technology there as well.
Oh, right.
So,
yeah.
So from the beginning, so that means I always pick up packed cheese. I never pick up a cheese in paper or in foil or in banana boxes. So I forced my.
In other words, it's not France. Just joking.
Yes. I forced my producers to pack and label the cheese at the moment when I pick it up. Yeah.
So, can we talk about that for 1 minute, Norbert? Because I find it, and this is a little technical, but this is something that you did 6-7 years ago with the scales. So to give like a brief background, Norbert was very clever to create technology for the producers he's working with, where they're actually able to pack and label for our spec for import at the site of their dairy instead of having to bring everything to a central facility for the packing. And it really helped, I think, for us with launching new products because it meant that there wasn't this like added barrier where things had to be like processed off-site. And I've always really like envied the fact that you had the foresight to do that. It's a pretty cool idea. And then to watch your business mature and to discover Albert and to like figure out this idea with Arturo and Albert has just been great for us. And this is, if you want to go back for anybody watching, if you want to go back and watch the conversation we did with Norbert and Albert, we talk a little bit about how Outblossom made a transition around the same time to production at Kraus and just how beneficial it's been just for all parties involved. Also in this age of FSMA and all these HACCP plans and everything, just really narrowing the scope of the people we're working with and the facilities we're visiting, and all of that has been just extremely beneficial. If I'm not mistaken, didn't FDA visit Obermühle right at the sort of end of Chiriboga's production there?
So they were there in 2018, in June. So, and we succeeded, yeah.
Yeah, and for all of those who haven't been visited by them yet, how was your experience with the FDA?
My experience or Arturo?
I mean, from what I hear, like these visits have been really pleasant. These aren't.
I think first of all, they asked us more or less the same question our veterinary departments ask. So there is nothing hidden. This is the same safety standard we have here in Europe. So that means for Arturo or for all cheesemakers, it's more or less a different inspector in a different language probably, who ask more or less the same questions or have the same standards or wants to know the same things. I think for sure it's different because it's a foreign inspection. It's not the veterinary department around the corner. So it's different. So probably you're more nervous or I don't know. But at the end, it's for the customers' health security, and we are all humans, and we should be all protected in the same way. So
absolutely,
and so there is not so much differences. No.
Yeah. I think it's important to point out that these actually tend to be relatively pleasant experiences for people. It's an opt-in, not an opt-out, from the feedback we get. Was the inspector, I don't know if it was a man or a woman, but was the inspector surprised by the size of the dairy? Did they wonder where the rest of the dairy was?
I think the funny thing is, because he comes with a catalog, with a protocol. So in the beginning, he asked for how many employees, who is the owner, who do the technical support, bam, bam, bam. And it was only one name, Arturo Chiriboga. So he fills out all the position. He normally asks for 30 different persons. So this was the funny thing. I think he get also to smile about that.
That's good. Okay, so just going back to Chiriboga, I think that we were curious about usage. So we've always kind of highlighted that these cheeses, were the cheeses developed to use in the restaurant, or did they, how did the restaurant and the cheese dairy interact, and how did they use the blue, if they did, in the restaurant at Obermühle?
En realidad nosotros lo utilizamos para la venta, ¿no? Porque a la gente le gustó tanto el producto que empezaron a comprar directo en la tienda de la Obermühle, ¿no? Era para venderlo, sí. O sea, el restaurante también lo utilizaba, pero no mucho, pero en realidad lo hicimos para venderlo a la gente, ¿no?
He's saying that it wasn't designed specifically for the restaurant. It was more designed for the cheese shop.
Okay. Did they make any dishes? Norbert, have you ever had anything at the restaurant that used the Chiriboga?
I think the cheese plate has had but for cooking I never have had a dish with cheese. So I think the cheese we use for cooking is the Käsespätzle cheese. So it's noodles, mac and cheese. In a self-made version.
What about at Schattbusch? Does Schattbusch do anything with?
Yes, for sure. Yes, they make a cream as a starter on the last menu they have had in the winter. They cook a lot with Chiriboga.
Yeah. I would be curious if you could, next time you talk to them or see them, they're open again, right?
Yeah, they're open again since 1 week. 2 weeks.
Yeah. Schattbusch is a restaurant. Can you explain just real quick what we're talking about, the restaurant?
Yeah, this is a friend of us, of Manu and me, and they have a 1-star Michelin restaurant. They are not far away. They have a really good cheese board, for sure international, not only highlighted by the Allgäu one, but we bring in all the good Allgäu cheese stuff. Yes.
Yeah. And they, yeah, it's like the next time I get to get on a plane, that's where I want to go. So, but if you could talk to, if they ever wanted to share a recipe, that's something that I think our customers are really kind of after. It's Chiriboga is something that is obviously very good to cook with, and we've had things like ice cream. I had a cheesemonger that told me they made meatloaf muffins and then iced them with Chiriboga, which is crazy. And so we're always looking for usage. So, if you get a chance next time you see them, it'd be nice. What about drinks? Is there anything from, is it just, what kind of schnapps is good with Chiriboga? Or is there anything you like to pair with it? Either beer or spirits, either one of you?
I think it's very important. We do once a year, we go to the Pro Wine. Pro Wine is the biggest fair of wine shows in all over the world, and it's in Düsseldorf. And we are together with a German wine producer, and they have an ice wine. And you could use a sweet Riesling or an ice wine, and this blows up your mind together with Chiriboga Blue.
Right. Yeah.
That's my recommendation. Probably Arturo has a different one. So, but ice wine and Chiriboga, that's perfect.
Arturo, have you ever had any cheeses from the U.S. or are there any cheeses from other parts of the world that you really like?
En realidad he estado varias veces en los Estados Unidos, ¿no? Tengo familia allá y he probado algunos quesos, sí, lamentablemente no con como digo, con el saber cuál queso era, sino por ejemplo el cheddar, ¿no? ¿Ya? Diferentes tipos de vejez, ¿no? ¿Ya? Y el cheddar para mí es un buen queso, pero cuando está maduro.
Okay. So he's saying that he's been to the US several times because he has family here, and that he's tried several different cheeses, but mostly he just knows that it's cheddar that he likes, and specifically mature cheddar, an older cheddar.
It's good. People like it. So are you, and I know we want to wrap up pretty soon. From what I understand, Arturo wakes up very early in the morning in order to get over to Kraus. How long of a trip is it from between the two areas?
It's an hour, 40 minutes, 45. I think in the morning he's fast enough, yeah.
But that milk shows up early, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Arturo, I want to thank you so much for talking to us. We've forever wanted to be able to have you speak to us in a public forum. And every time we have planned for Arturo to come to CMI, something has happened. It's been like 5 years of this and that and the other. So it's really nice to be able to do that. Doug, do we have any questions from people out there for Arturo?
I think not. We had a question earlier about the type of breed for the cow, for the milk for Chiriboga, but we answered that, and I'm soliciting, but not seeing anything else right now. So I think we nailed everything.
I think the only other thing I would be curious about is how production, without getting too much into it, we just, in the last 2 weeks, and sorry to spoil your email from next week, Melissa, but we've just seen a shortfall in Taleggio, right? So Taleggio for us is an interesting cheese, kind of temporally, because it's always the first thing to be affected by a crisis. So if Italy's running out of milk, we watch the Taleggio dip 65 days or 90 days later. And so we're right about at the beginning or mid-March period right now of production. And so we're seeing from, and this is in the heart of Lombardy, so it's like right where, the European crisis really emerged. Have you seen like any major effects, and Norbert, you might be able to speak to this more broadly, and I know we spoke about it a month ago, but that feels like 5 years ago at this point. So how is the dairy world surviving in the Allgäu? Is Emma still going up to the Alp this summer? Like, give us a little, if you can, a little snapshot of the state of the world there.
Yeah, yes. I think they for sure they have problems. That's not only the crisis. It's not only my business. It's not only the export. It's also the tourism, which was zero. So that means look at Guntersried, where the Backsteiner comes from. They sell normally 70% of their dairy production to at the farm, and I want to say, and then there are 90% tourists, and 10% only people who are living there. And without the tourists, without being able to travel, they have had a big gap. So I think it was the same at the Obermühle, but on the other hand, the online business was very good for them. So they could so shops like Obermühle, who has an online shop, or Guntersried, who has an online shop, are able to cover a little bit of their loss with that.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, probably not Arturo, but on the other hand, there is like Guntersried, they make hard cheese or semi-hard cheese, which is good, and Albert as well, which is good. They can still keep it in the cave. So that means, guys, in the summer and September, you will get really good aged Alex, for example.
Right. No, I mean, this has been kind of an ongoing trend in these conversations. OG Crystal, we're actually going to start having it available for people to buy. You know, with the transition of Chiriboga that happened, Kellerhocker is the proper age now. You know, in a lot of cases, you know, and there are very few silver linings to be found right now. But a lot of cheese has been kind of missing its proper rest. So that's maybe a benefit, unfortunately, of these bad times. So anyway, well, thank you for that. And thank you for joining us. Melissa, thank you for your work in coordinating translation. Doug, for setting it up. Arturo, it's just wonderful to see you. Your smiling face always just reminds us why it's so important to like do our work and get the cheese out there and let people taste it and enjoy it. And it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. So
I have one late arriving question.
Okay.
It's from our fearless leader, and it's for you, Jonathan. He wants to know why you're wearing a Newfoundland shirt on a German Zoom.
Because the Chiriboga shirts haven't been made yet, and my Outblossom mask. Wait, who's got an Outblossom mask? Outblossom masks haven't arrived yet.
They're in New York, or?
Yeah.
So Jonathan, take it. Take it.
There you go.
Perfect,
there you go.
Thank you. Hello,
Pregunten a Norbert.
That wraps on questions.
Yeah, no, very good. Well, thank you all. What's that, Melissa?
Arturo said to ask Norbert for a Chiriboga shirt.
Yeah, I know. Well, this is next.
This is next and special when Arturo finally comes to any of the CMIs.
Yeah. Is it legal to ship Chiriboga shirts to the U.S.?
Yes, now, yes.
All right. Well, we want to wish everybody a good Friday, a good weekend, a happy 4th of July. We're definitely going to take next week off with the holiday coming up, and or that's 2 weeks anyway. So anyway, we'll see you next time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and see you soon.